Welcome to Wesley Memorial Methodist Church. My name's Claire Cotter, I'm the manager up at the Old Rectory, and it's such a joy to welcome Starfire Choir. It makes me wonder, looking at all you lot, this is one of the youth choirs from Los Altos Methodist Church in California, just one of them, and I guess it's just part of one of them too. Wonderful that you've been with us all day. Visiting the rectory and enjoying Epworth. I've seen you frequenting in the coffee shops and the pizza parlours and everywhere else, so it's great that you're here. This is the final stage of their 3-week tour of England and Ireland, and Wales, so they're very tired, they've been on a hectic schedule, and actually for some members of the choir, this is their last performance before they go off to college and leave the choir, so it is a very emotional time for some of them, and it's wonderful that we're able to share in such a special moment. The musical you're going to hear tonight has been written for this tour by Dirk and Carol, youth ministers for this age group in that church. And so it's a very special musical, and we're honoured that you want to share that with us here in Epworth. The concert tonight is being given in aid of the rectory, and it's a huge honour to us, and we're very grateful that we can prepare to do that for us too. There are refreshments available at the end of the musical. You will need to go out the main door and round to get to them, but they will help you with that. So we'll have more of the musical and not me, so I'll get hand over to them. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you, Claire, and thank you for all the great work you're doing to keep our legacy alive at the rectory. My name is Dirk Camonte, and I'm the Minister of Music and Worship Arts at the Los Altos United Methodist Church in Los Altos, California. A little bit kind of close to San Francisco, if you're familiar with that area. And I bring you greetings from the people called Methodists in Los Altos, California. And it is an honor to be here, a joy to be here. We did start 16 days ago, and we've done performances in Watford, and in Galway, and in Oxford, and then in Northern Ireland, and it is so fitting that we end here where it all began, where our denomination was born, where our belief in the social gospel, and where our belief in the power of Jesus to change lives was born in the work and the lives of John and Charles Wesley. Carol and I wrote the show for this tour, as Clara said, and we wrote the show as a response to God's call on our lives to be followers of Jesus. I believe we wrote this in keeping with the legacy of John and Charles Wesley of touching heaven and changing earth, of believing in the personal holiness and social responsibility, both being so important. And when we're called to be followers of Jesus, we're called to be followers of the cross. Sometimes that means we're called to go into some uncomfortable places and some painful places, because that's where Jesus went, and it's where Jesus goes. Jesus reaches out to the least and the lost, and to the lonely and to the marginalized. And so you may find the first part of the show a little bit uncomfortable as we explore some of the issues we believe Jesus is calling us to confront today. I would encourage you to be uncomfortable and look at those places of discomfort as we are looking at them, but then come with us to hope, because our faith is a faith of hope. Our faith is a faith that says never is death or despair or isolation the final answer. We worship a God who calls us to love God and love ourselves and love our neighbor, and we believe that love is a love that is contagious and is a love we're being called to share with the whole world. It is our honor to be sharing it here with all of you good people, and we thank you for your hospitality, for lunch and the dinner, and for being here tonight, for helping us celebrate the call to be followers of Christ, for helping us to present justice.
Then Jesus began to teach his disciples, "The human one must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and the legal experts, be killed, and then, after 3 days, rise from the dead. He said this plainly. But Peter took hold of Jesus and, scolding him, began to correct him. Jesus turned to look at his disciples, then sternly corrected Peter. Get behind me, Satan. You are not thinking God's thoughts, but human thoughts. After calling the crowd together with his disciples, Jesus said to them, all who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross and follow me. All who want to save their lives will lose them. But all who lose their lives because of me, because of the good news, will save them. Why would people gain the whole world but lose their lives? What will people give in exchange for their lives?
What is that supposed to mean? How am I supposed to live like that? What does that mean? Say no to yourself. Pick up your cross and follow me. How are we supposed to do that?
To understand, you have to understand the cross.
Exactly. That's my problem. I don't understand. How can I take up my cross if I don't even understand the cross Jesus took up?
Look more closely at the cross. See where it takes you.
See where it takes us?
Yeah, look at it, examine it, take it apart. It'll lead you to answers.
Wait, what's happening?
Remember, follow the cross. See where it takes you.
But they're taking it apart. It's not a cross anymore.
Follow the pieces. You'll see it's a difficult journey, but it's a journey of understanding, a journey of discipleship. It's a journey of faith.
Okay, I'll try.
more completely.
Alright, but where are we gonna end up?
That's part of the journey. You don't know where you'll end up until you begin.
But that's scary.
It can be, but remember what the cross is all about. It's about pain, suffering, and betrayal.
But it doesn't end there. Always remember that it's about love.
And always remember that you'll never be traveling alone.
Luke 14, 12 through 14. Then Jesus said to the person who had invited him, "When you host a lunch or dinner, don't invite your friends, your brothers and sisters, your relatives or rich neighbors. If you do, they will invite you in return, and that will be your reward. Instead, when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they can't repay you. Instead, you will be repaid when the just are resurrected."
The first piece of the cross has led you to encounter some of the homeless and hungry in the world. These are people all around you, and you probably walk by them almost every day. Some days, you don't even see them. Other days, you pretend you don't see. Some days, you'll actually reach in your pocket, give them some spare change, a pound, maybe two. Other days, you pretend you don't have any money at all.
They weren't invisible to Jesus. They aren't invisible to Jesus.
So here they are. Here they are, and here's the first piece of the cross of Jesus.
I'm not sure I get this. What does this have to do with taking up my cross?
Yeah, how does this piece of the cross bring us here?
Like we said, these are some of the homeless and hungry in the world. These are some of the people Jesus hung out with.
And these are some of the people that Jesus gave his life for. People who were rejected by society, people who were on the fringe.
Yeah, I get that. I just don't understand how this answers our question of what it means for us to follow Jesus.
You followed the first piece of the cross in a place you probably haven't ever really been before. Part of following Jesus means seeing the world through Jesus' eyes. That means seeing people and situations with eyes of love and compassion.
And that means hearing through Jesus' ears. And that means listening to their stories. Come on, hear what they have to say.
I live mostly on the northeast side of town, near the warehouse district. I mean, that's my spot, where my stuff is. Sometimes I'll get a bed in the shelter, but you have to get up early for those. They fill up fast. People ask me how I got here. I don't really know, to be honest. Certainly not where I plan to be. All I know is at night I get so scared. I don't know where to look for hope or for safety. I don't think I can trust anyone anymore.
I live under the overpass. I sleep there most nights. I call the bridge 1023. There's this woman that stops by and helps me out sometimes, buys me coffee, a hot meal every now and then. She calls the bridge 1023. I think that's because that's the day she first learned it's where I live. I don't know, just sort of stuck for a name. How I identify it from all the other overpasses that look just like it. I'll walk over to Starbucks most mornings. I'll sit outside and count coins people give me till I have enough to buy a cup of coffee. People give me their change. Sometimes they drop foreign coins on the table. I don't know what they want me to do with those. Most of the time, they don't look at me. And they almost never talk to me.
I live in the part of the city that people call shame. Well, there's other names. There's the more official names the street signs say. But most people call it shame. And it is a shame. It's a shame that there are parts of the city like this. It's a shame that there's so many of us sleeping on the streets out there. It's a shame the way addictions and mental illnesses grip so many of us, and there just aren't the resources to get help. Mostly, it's a shame that people step over me, or cross to the other side of the street, or pretend they don't see me while they're on the way to work, or to the movies, or to go shopping. I'm here, living in shame.
Wow, you're right. I really haven't heard stories like these before. I know. Stopping and listening makes you realize that each one of these people are people who are living lives and struggling to make it, and they all have real hopes and dreams and joys and real sorrows.
The cross is about Jesus being willing to lay it all down, to give it all up, everything for us. What are we willing to give up to bring healing to this world?
Side of the bridge she calls 1023. The bridge she calls 1023. I can't call it home, can't call it safe. It's all I got for me. It's all I got for me. Most mornings I'm drinking coffee bought by strangers who pass. They leave foreign coins, but they never will last. Where we going today? And I think just going to the underside of the bridge she calls 1023. The bridge she calls 1023. Do you really want to give it up for the homeless out there? Really, really want to heal them up from a place of despair? Is it time for you to stand up, give a hint that you care? Or will you sit around and go out, never move from your chair? Do you really want to give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up? Do you really want to give it up, give it up? Give it up, give it up. Do you really want to give it up? Give it up, give it up, give it up. Do you really, really want to give it up? Give it up, give it up, give it up.
I'm living in the city now in a section of people call shame.
The city of people call shame.
They see my world, don't seem to care. They never ask me my name.
They never ask me my name.
Invisible people, that's who we become. Rough sleepers and beggars, lost on the run. Can't you see that we're here?
other side of the bridge.
I really want to see it all share.
Do you really, really want to give it up? Give it up, give it up, give it up. Do you really want to give it up? Give it up, give it up, give it up.
Oh, we pray that you will give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up.
Can we really sing give it up? Give it up, give it up, give it up. Do you really, really want to give it up? Give it up, give it up, give it up.
Isaiah 41:10. Don't fear, because I am with you. Don't be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will surely help you. I will hold you with my righteous, strong hand.
Wow, that was tough. That's a hard question. Do you really want to give it up?
I know. What does that really mean, anyway? I mean, Jesus' disciples give up everything to follow him. Is that what that's about?
Maybe it's about giving up our preconceived notions, really seeing the homeless, really listening to their stories.
Or giving up our excuses. That can be so scary. That scripture from Isaiah, don't fear because I am with you, that can be good to remember. It can bring a lot of comfort.
Well, what's next? Where's the second piece of the cross taking us?
The second piece of the cross has led you to the grim truth of slavery.
Slavery? Didn't that end 150 years ago?
Sadly, no, not at all. In fact, there are more slaves living worldwide today than in any point in human history. More than when the Hebrew people were slaves in Egypt. More than when Africans were kidnapped and brought to the United States against their will. The slave trade is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, a $32 billion business. There are more than 27 million people enslaved around the world today. At least 27 million people being completely controlled by another person, suffering beatings or threats of beatings, being forced to do things for someone else's selfishness and greed.
But that's all over in countries we've barely heard of, places we'll never go to. There's nothing we can do about it here.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of people think, but really, that's not true at all.
What do you mean?
Well, first of all, it's happening all around us. We just don't see it. But every big city has more human trafficking going on than you guys can even imagine.
Right. It happens in the United States. It happens in places like the Philippines and Cambodia. It happens in Europe, like in the Netherlands. It's everywhere. But no matter where it is, there's plenty we can do about it.
And it happens to all kinds of people. Men, women, adults, and children. People in developing countries, people in the most developed countries, and everywhere in between.
Wow, 27 million. I don't know, those numbers are completely overwhelming.
They are, but the first step is to put a face to each number, to see each number as a person who's suffering.
I guess it's like what we found with the homeless people. When we stopped to look at them, to be with them and hear their stories, they stopped being a statistic. They stopped being someone we could ignore. They became real.
Well, that's definitely also true of the women, the children, and the men who are victims of human trafficking and slavery. They are very real, and they are suffering every day.
They are. And it might seem like they're invisible to us, but that's because we haven't learned where to look, what to see, or even what to listen for.
When we hear their stories, our hearts break for them. Our hearts break with them.
This woman is my sister, this person is my friend, this child, she is my daughter, this young boy is my son. So don't turn away,
shame, spirit, soul, and limbs in chains, I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. Dusty feet, they walk the road, weighted by life's heavy load, I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. This woman is my sister. This person is my friend. This child, she is my daughter. This young boy is my son. So don't turn away from the face that you see. She may be just one in 27 million, but she's everything to me. Little one so broken down, used to be then passed around. I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. Empty eyes with nothing there, fragile body, no one cares. I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you.
Child of God and Son of Man, both tortured by the human hand, I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. Wandering in a wilderness, only seeking to be blessed, I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. I cry with you. Oh, I pray for you. Broken worlds, painful lives, shattered dreams, hungry eyes, darkness grips, mighty veins, where to turn, so afraid. This woman is my sister, this person is my friend, this child, she is my daughter, this young boy is my son. So don't turn away from the face that you see. She may be just one in 27 million, but she's everything to me. She may be just one in 27 million, but she's everything to me.
Isaiah 31, 1 through 5. Doom to those going down to Egypt for help. They rely on horses, trust in chariots because they are many, and on riders because they are very strong. But they don't look to the Holy One of Israel. They don't seek the Lord. But God also knows how to bring disaster. He has not taken back his words. God will rise up against the house of evildoers and against the help of those who do wrong. Egypt is human, not divine. Their horse is flesh, not spirit. The Lord will extend his hand, the helper will stumble, those helped will fall, and they will all die together.
it's just like with the homeless. It's about hearing stories and seeing faces.
So much seems like it's about opening our eyes to things that are going on right around us. It is, but it feels so overwhelming. What are we supposed to do about it? I guess the first part of following the cross is seeing it, really knowing it.
And once we do, we can't just go back to our Bible studies and youth group meetings and Sunday morning worship pretending like we don't know.
Yeah, I know, but then what?
I don't know. I guess we'll see. We still have more parts of the cross to follow.
The third stick is for war and violence.
Are we going into a war?
No, not into a war. This part of the cross is for all of those affected by war and violence everywhere.
Currently, there are 10 conflicts going on in the world that cause 1,000 or more casualties a year.
There are?
Yeah, and some of them are decades old. In Burma, or Myanmar, more than 200,000 people have been killed since 1948. 65 years it's been going on. Last year alone, more than 12,000 civilians were killed in the violence there.
Or Afghanistan. Did you know that between 1.5 to 2 million people have been killed there since 1978? Last year, there were almost 9,000 deaths.
Well, there's the Mexican drug war.
Well, that's not really a war.
It's not? More than 86,000 people have been killed in that conflict since 2006. Last year, it was over 18,000. Just in the first 3 months of this year, it's over 3,000.
And besides the larger conflicts, there are at least 32 other countries suffering casualties right now.
Like insurgencies in Yemen, or Thailand, or North Caucasus, or the Philippines, each which had hundreds of deaths last year.
Or wherever there's a terrorist attack, like the Boston Marathon, or the young British soldier who was attacked on the street in May.
More mind-numbing numbers and statistics. And as we're learning, every single number represents a real person, a real family, real pain, real suffering.
And sadly, it's not just those killed by war and violence or their families that suffer.
No, not at all. By the end of 2011, 42.5 million people had been forcibly displaced from their homes due to war and violence.
And every minute of every day, 8 people leave everything behind to escape war, persecution, or terror. Every minute.
Some of these conflicts have been going on for generations. Some are new flaring up of old hostilities. Some are brand new conflicts.
But in every case, wars fought over religion or political tension or ethnic struggles or anything else ultimately impact those who have no power, no control, and no say in the conflict at all.
And that is where the cross leads us.
Everywhere we turn, another gang fight. Dark night, ignite a firefight. I don't care who's right. Young man's gravesite, on guard, beware. Enemies are everywhere. Once again, there is another bomb blast. Tear gas, Damascus, Belfast. Who can outlast till the last gasp? On guard, beware. Enemies are everywhere. Sticks, stones, break bones, much might makes right. Bombs drop by droves. Just war, just fight. Get them or get got. Win now at all costs. Wars must be fought. Or the brave souls lost. Since time began, it's always been this way. Same old fight, it's just a different day. If we've been wrong, someone has to pay. This is the game that we all must play. Muster up the troops, it's time to declare
Warfare, beware, big scare. It's our nightmare to know they're out there. settle score, closed door uproar. Meet them before they meet us, more on guard, beware, enemies are everywhere. Sticks, stones, break bones, much might makes right. Bombs drop, high jumps, just more, just might. Get there or get got, win now at all costs. Wars must be fought, or numbering souls lost. Since time began, it's always been this way. Same old fight, it's just a different day. If we've been wrong, someone has to pay. This is the game that we all must play. Since time began, it's always been this way. Same old fight, it's just a different day. If we've been wrong, someone has to pay. This is the game that we all must play.
Romans 12, 3-18. Because of the grace that God gave me, I can say to each one of you, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Instead, be reasonable, since God has measured out a portion of faith to each one of you. We have many parts in one body. The parts don't all have the same function. In the same way, though there are many of us, we are one body in Christ, and individually we belong to each other. We have different gifts that are consistent with God's grace that has been given to us. If your gift is prophecy, you should prophesy in proportion to your faith. If your gift is service, devote yourself to serving. If your gift is teaching, devote yourself to teaching. If your gift is encouragement, devote yourself to encouraging. The one giving should do it with no strings attached. The leader should lead with passion. The one showing mercy should be cheerful. Love should be shown without pretending. Hate evil and hold on to what is good. Love each other like the members of your family. Be the best at showing honor to each other. Don't hesitate to be enthusiastic. Be on fire in the Spirit as you serve the Lord. Be happy in your hope. Stand your ground when you're in trouble and devote yourselves to prayer. Contribute to the needs of God's people and welcome strangers into your home. Bless people who harass you. Bless and don't curse them. Be happy with those who are happy and cry with those who are crying. Consider everyone as equal and don't think that you're better than anyone else. Instead, associate with people who have no status. Don't think that you're so smart. Don't pay back anyone for their evil actions with evil actions. But show respect for what everyone else believes is good. If possible, to the best of your ability, live at peace with all people.
That's so gay.
She's so ugly.
She's so hot.
Muslims are all terrorists.
Jews are so stingy.
Christians are incredibly judgmental.
That's not very feminine of you.
People on welfare are so lazy.
She is way too skinny.
He's such a retard.
What are you guys doing? You're being so cruel.
If you'd seen what we've seen so far, you wouldn't be saying such a vicious thing.
This is also petty and stupid compared to what we've just seen.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, there's homelessness, trafficking, and slavery, and violence going on all over the world, and all of you are just judging people based on superficial prejudice.
Whoa! That's the thing! These are all examples of how it is easy for people to fall into this trap of labeling each other and judging each other. This is where most of all those other problems start, with prejudice and discrimination.
And before we know it, we're painting others with the broad strokes of bigotry and stereotyping, which make it so much easier to hate.
And then we can hate all the people who aren't just like us.
And we can draw lines. And put up walls.
And keep people out.
And keep ourselves safe.
And that's why war starts. That's why people dehumanize other people. That's why the homeless beg for another meal. That's why they don't have a place to sleep at night.
Yeah, I can see how it's all connected.
And it's why part of the cross leads you here. It leads you into the middle of hate speech, which can be as small as calling someone a name, or as huge as labeling a whole race or religion with a derogatory smear.
But the freedom that Jesus brings is only freedom if it's available to everyone. Justice can't happen where there is prejudice and discrimination. Discrimination and prejudice make us blind to each other. Make us shut each other out. Make us slaves to our own hatred and narrow-mindedness. Freedom won't happen until we break down those walls. Can't you see what's inside of me? Don't you want to understand? Dare I say, oh, we could be such good friends. But you seal up the door, throw the key on the floor, ask your conscience for more. As you push aside God's freedom. Where justice truly wins for all, where gospel breaks the chains of human suffering, and love lights the way through the black and the gray as we reach out and pray, with our eyes upon God's freedom.
Matthew 25:31-45. Now when the human one comes in his majesty, and all his angels are with him, he will sit on his majestic throne. All the nations will be gathered in front of him. He will separate them from each other, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right, but the goats he will put on his left. Then he will say to those on his right, "Come, you who will receive good things from my Father. Inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you before the world began. I was hungry, and you gave me food to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothes to wear. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then those who are righteous will reply, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you, or naked and give you clothes to wear? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" Then the king will reply, "I assure you that when you have done it for one of the least of these, brothers and sisters of mine, you have done it for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Get away from me, you who will receive terrible things. Go into the unending fire that has been prepared for the devil and his angels. I was hungry, and you didn't give me food to eat. I was thirsty, and you didn't give me anything to drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't welcome me. I was naked, and you didn't give me clothes to wear. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me." Then those on his left will reply, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or naked, or sick and in prison, and didn't do anything to help you?" Then the king will answer, "I assure you that when you haven't done it for one of the least of these, you haven't done it for me."
Well, this is exhausting and so discouraging. Homelessness, trafficking and slavery, war and violence, prejudice and discrimination. It's overwhelming.
And there's another stick, another part of the cross still here.
There is, although really, this part incorporates all the other parts as well. This is the stick of poverty.
And everything you've seen so far, homelessness, slavery and trafficking, war and violence, prejudice and discrimination, all have roots in poverty.
Poverty grips people. It's a prison that can feel impossible to get out of.
Whether it's a single mother working 3 jobs to put food on the table for her children, or the migrant worker moving from place to find work to feed his family, or the children living in the dumps in Cambodia or the Philippines, poverty brings pain and struggle and heartache into people's lives.
It brings hopelessness with it.
And sickness and grief.
And it leads people to desperation.
It turns neighbor against neighbor, village against village, country against country.
And the numbers are staggering.
Children don't have
they leave them all in tatters.
Squalor in city slums, 28% of children are underweight. 20% of us consume 80% of resources. 1% of money spent on weapons can send every child to school to graduate. Numbers overwhelmed, they leave us numb, too much to bear. We want to make a difference. We want to show we care, but how can people such as us do anything that matters? Numbers take our grand ideas and they leave them all in tatters.
This is all so overwhelming.
I know. We followed the cross, or pieces of the cross anyway, and all it's done is led us to some dark, depressing places.
It just feels so hopeless. I mean, sure, it's raised our awareness, but it seems like it's just made us more aware of how much pain and suffering and despair there is in the world.
It feels like there's no way we can do anything to alleviate even a tiny percentage of it.
That's what I'm saying. It's hopeless.
But there's got to be a reason why we were led to these places. There's got to be some purpose to it, right?
Yeah, remember, this all started because we were wondering what it means to take up our cross and follow Jesus. I mean, that's why we started following in the first
I have a feeling we're about to find out.
That's right. Don't give up. Not yet. Not after you've come this far.
You followed the pieces of the cross into these places of brokenness and pain.
You've seen how the cross enters into places of poverty and war and violence and prejudice and discrimination.
The pieces of the cross enter into those places and into the darkness of human trafficking and slavery, but they don't stay there.
What do you mean they don't stay there?
The cross is an instrument of suffering. It was created by human cruelty.
Its sole purpose was to destroy.
Through unimaginable pain, suffering, and agony.
Right, we get that, and we get that it's still present in our world in so many places and in so many ways.
Yeah, so this instrument of pain, torture, and death has led us to some places of real injustice, pain, and suffering in our world. Fine, lesson learned. But where's the hope?
The hope is right where pain and suffering are. The hope is that God's love does not run away from these places.
Hardly. God's love goes deep into those places. God weeps with the grieving, suffers with the suffering, struggles with the struggling.
That's the point of following the cross into these places. What was intended to inflict the most pain ultimately conveyed the most love.
You've only followed the cross halfway. You followed it into the broken places. Now, follow it back into wholeness. Jesus touched lepers, forgave those fallen from grace, ate with the outcast and the marginalized. All so that God's love would infuse them, so that hope might spring up where despair had darkened their lives.
Isaiah 58, verses 6 through 8. Isn't this the fast I choose? Releasing wicked restraints, untying the ropes of a yoke, setting free the mistreated, and breaking every yoke? Isn't it sharing your bread with the hungry and bringing the homeless poor in your house? Covering the naked when you see them and not hiding from your own family? Then your light will break out like the dawn, and you will be healed quickly. Your own righteousness will walk beside you, and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard.
Yes, there is suffering on our streets and in every nation of the world.
You met some of these people when you first began following the cross. Well, they're still here.
Only now, we're not just sorting out whatever spare change someone might throw our way.
Now we've got a place where at least we'll know we'll get a good meal. All of this is a church social hall, transformed a few times a week into a warm, dry place where people can come and get a decent meal.
You see, when the cross led people to see the faces on the streets, it touched their hearts. It moved them to take action.
It's part of bold service and social justice. We have teams like this team here that go where the need is and do things to try and alleviate some of the immediate need.
And we have advocacy groups that study the issues and work to change the systems that lead to the needs in the first place.
What it really is about is following the cross to where the hurt, the hungry, and the homeless are, and showing up.
Showing up means bringing what we've learned, seeing through freshly opened eyes, and being willing to enter into the story, to see and to touch and hear and feel.
Be the hands and feet
Leviticus 6:8. He has told you, human one, what is good and what the Lord requires from you. To do justice, embrace faithful love, and walk humbly with your God.
Remember this stick?
Of course, how could we forget? Slavery, trafficking, 27 million victims all around the world. In some ways, that was the most depressing stick of all.
Yeah, when we first learn of such tragedy, especially a tragedy brought on completely by human greed and cruelty, it can bring on immense sadness.
And a sense of futility. What can one person do in the face of 27 million or more victims?
That's why injustices such as human trafficking get perpetuated. Good people become paralyzed, and in their paralysis, they don't do anything to bring about change.
So what can people do?
Well, first off, people can pay attention to what they buy and even where it comes from. Find out if your clothes are made in sweatshops in developing countries, and always, remember, check out the source of your chocolate.
And not just chocolate. A lot of the food, the clothes, and the electronics that we love comes to us through the hands of institutionalized slavery.
So yeah, the first step is being informed. When injustice looks you in the eye, your choice is to look away or to open your eyes.
And we're here because we've kept our eyes open.
Exactly. And once you've educated yourself about what you buy and where it comes from, you can open your eyes wider and see the people, the real, living, breathing, dreaming, hoping people, all affected by trafficking and slavery.
And then you see the hope. People who have taken the time to really see the face of their sister and brother in the face of the abused can't help but connect with them.
And there are organizations with their feet on the ground, helping rescue the victims of trafficking, helping fight for the laws to protect men, women, and children. There are missionaries working every day to create viable and sustainable means for people to support their family, so that they don't see selling their daughters and sons or themselves as the only way out of their poverty.
People who follow the cross into and then through and out of the bondage of human trafficking and slavery live according to the call of the prophet Micah. He has told you, human one, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, to do justice, to embrace faithful love, and to walk humbly with your God.
Hey,
Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God.
It's good to see you again.
So are we going to put an end to war and violence?
We're going to believe we can.
We are going to be the voice saying that war and violence aren't the way.
We are going to advocate for those affected by war and violence, for the men, women, and children, the orphans, the widows, the refugees.
It's all over the Bible. God's call for us to be peacemakers. God's longing for us to know peace, to know shalom with each other.
Isaiah 54:10 says, "The mountains may shift and the hills may be shaken, but my faithful love won't shift from you, and my covenant of peace won't be shaken," says the Lord, the one who pities you.
And Jeremiah 29:7, where the prophet says, "Promote the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord for it, because your future depends on its welfare."
God calls us as part of God's covenant people to the community of Shalom. God calls us to constantly be expanding our vision of this community, to welcome the exile, the outcast, the alien, to live in covenant with each other, just as God lives in covenant with us.
Jesus summed it up best when he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God."
You'll be called the children. You'll be called the children of God. You'll be called the children. You'll be called the children of God when you make peace. Make peace. When you make peace. You are the children of God.
Peace must be made, worked and not discovered. Peace comes when God's justice is recovered. Peace is what we do with one another. When we live as God's children, sister, brother, we are called to be makers of peace. Hatred, war, and violence must cease. Jesus said to practice what we preach. To be the hands and feet of Christ to each.
You'll be called the children. You'll be called the children of God. You'll be called the children. You'll be called the children of God when you make peace. Make peace. When you make peace. You are the children of God.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Jesus said it, we're called to live it, called to be it, to make it so. But for God, for others, for self, Jesus said that this is the way. May our lives be acts of peace, so that everyone can know
You'll be called the children. You'll be called the children of God. You'll be called the children. You'll be called the children of God when you make peace. Make peace. When you
Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female. We are all one in Christ Jesus.
When you followed this piece of the cross before, you came into a world where people just couldn't or wouldn't see each other. They judge each other based on superficialities, on prejudices, on stereotypes.
It probably seemed kind of petty. The way we made assumptions about each other based on nationality, or sexual orientation, or gender, or skin color, or body type.
And it is. That's the point. It's totally superficial.
And yet so many of the other things we've seen on this journey, slavery and trafficking, war and violence, even homelessness and poverty, can trace many, if not all, of their roots back to discrimination, prejudice, hatred, and fear.
People put other people in boxes, in categories, and then treat them according to their intolerant perceptions.
The people in power think the only way to hold on to their power is to keep other people out of it, to keep them in their place.
Which all too often means keeping them oppressed, beaten down, subjugated.
But again, that's not how God views things. That's not how he views the human community.
1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7 says, God doesn't look at things like humans do. Humans see only what is visible to the eyes, but the Lord sees into the heart.
And it is even more basic than that. In the first chapter of Genesis, it says God created humanity in God's own image. In the divine image, God created them. Male and female, God created them. God makes no distinction. We're all created in God's image.
And Jesus makes it very clear when he says in the Gospel of Matthew, don't judge, so you won't be judged.
So our call is first to live how Jesus calls us to live. Not judging others, welcoming others into the shalom community, believing as Paul wrote, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for we are all one. And then we are called to reach out to those who have known the tyranny of prejudice, discrimination, hatred, and judgment, help them rise again.
We can be like the phoenix, rising from the ashes. We can take our old selves, the ones that hated others, who judged without knowing, who try to isolate and separate based on looks, gender, race, and religion, and leave those old selves behind. Let them be the ashes.
Yes, and by leaving them behind, we can rise together, all of us. We can rise together and find hope and healing.
Out of the
20 and 21. Then he looked up at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh."
And here is your final piece. Like prejudice and discrimination, poverty is the concept that runs through most, if not all, the injustices we've encountered.
And poverty is something that each one of us carries with us. There's the very real, tangible poverty of the poor among us.
And there's the poverty of spirit, the poverty of hope, the poverty of connection that so many others live in and with. Sometimes they can be even harder to reach because they often don't even know that they're poor.
But didn't Jesus say, "Here, the poor will always be with you"? Wasn't he just saying there's nothing we can do for them?
Hardly. Jesus is paraphrasing, as he often did, from the Hebrew scripture of Deuteronomy, saying that poor persons will never disappear from the earth.
Exactly. There will always be poor people.
But, which goes on to say, that's why I'm giving you this command. You must open your hand generously to your fellow Israelites, to the needy among you, and to the poor who live with you in your land.
Jesus wasn't saying to ignore the poor, but to accept poverty. He was saying we will always be called to reach out to the needy, to share what we have, and to be in connection with the poor among us. He was really saying you will always have the opportunity to serve the poor.
Remember, it was Jesus who said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled."
Jesus calls us to be blessing to each other.
Declaring to all the part of the glory.
and how the cross is complete.
We follow the cross into places where people are hurting, suffering, broken.
Where injustice has caused people great pain and suffering.
Yes, the cross is a symbol of that brokenness.
And yet, God's love didn't shy away from going into that brokenness.
Or even suffering with the broken, the lost, the abandoned, the marginalized.
I think that's the point. That's what taking up the cross means. It means following Jesus into places where we might not want to go,
but places where God's love is most needed.
And where God may be depending upon us to shine the light of that love.
Exactly. Because, you see, that very same cross, which once symbolized the brokenness and suffering and humiliation of crucifixion, that very same cross, which was devised by the cruelest and most hard-hearted parts of humanity's imagination, that cross is the very place that Jesus went unflinchingly, because not to go would have been to really give in to the powers and temptations of our inhumanity. Jesus carried that cross and sacrificed himself on that cross so that it and we could know hope again.
The knowledge that only comes when we've seen the faces of the struggling, acknowledged our own struggles, and we've seen the broken made whole again.
Made whole by the power and the promise and the hope of God's unending love.
No matter what, it is that hope, that promise, that love, which puts the pieces back together and calls us into the very heart of that love.
The whole point of the cross, this cross, is that it isn't the final answer. Suffering, cruelty, hatred are no match for God's love.
Right, because Jesus was willing to go to any lengths, even to be crucified on the cross, to show us that God's love will do anything for us. And then God's love couldn't be silenced or sealed in the tomb, even by that cross. God's love won. God's love wins.
God's love wins and lives and keeps on loving through it all. We may feel like giving up, but God doesn't.
God sees every one of us, every single one of us, as precious, as sacred children of God. God will never give up on any of us.
When we think it's all over, when we think all hope is gone, it's only because we've forgotten that message. We have forgotten that it is from those darkest places that the light shines.
It is from those places of despair that joy sings again.
Because God's love is the song of joy, the light that shines in the darkness. God's love is the hope that springs from the hopelessness. Light shines, joy sings, hope springs.
Rise, O wind, rise, as Lord.
takes us into places that make us extremely uncomfortable. And that's a good place to be sometimes. And that's good because by bringing us into dark places, it lets us understand how we can move to be transformed. It is in those places that we are empowered to make change. Not because it feels right, but because it is the right thing to do. I don't believe that justice is an option. As Micah says, justice is a requirement, not a suggestion. I pray that tonight you have been led into the darkness of the word uncomfortable. And I pray that you have been led from that word into a place where hope springs. It's when we live out these words, home, freedom, peace, abundance, and inclusion, that we can see and feel and proclaim justice as it rises up from the ashes. I thank you so much for coming and supporting this tonight. For us, yes, but more so because of what you're doing by offering your gifts to helping to rebuild and restore the rectory. That's incredible. Because that is the place that reaches out in this world. And you are the people who will help it move to reach out, to save the people who are in slavery, to feed the hungry, to be with all of those who are ostracized, marginalized. It is your gifts that will make a difference. And if you feel after this compelled to give more, please do. Because Jesus asks us to give and to give and to give, to save this earth and to make right the kingdom of heaven. That's what we're called to do. To be peacemakers and to be people of justice. And as you know and as we know, as Methodists, this is also what the Wesleys taught us. Social justice. It was all about the people and about caring for the lost. Let's show tonight and forevermore what that means. As we close tonight, we'd like to just sing one more song. This is a song that we do at the end of each concert we do. It's called Starfire. And it was written in conjunction with Dirk and me by a British hymn writer. Some of you may know him, Brian Wren. Brian came to Dirk and me and said, I really am curious about the name of your group. Tell me about it. And I told him the story about it. And he wrote this song, and it was at the time we were going to Soviet Russia with this group. And he got this idea in his head as peace was beginning to happen, that there could not be any suns on the earth. And what he meant was nuclear suns. And most people don't understand that line in the song because they don't know the story. But Brian felt that we could be peacemakers in this world, that we could make a difference. And that this difference came, first of all, from being in right relationship with that child born in the manger. That being in relationship with Jesus could bring about peace. So tonight we close and leave you with the song, Starfire.
Starfire.
on for me? I'm not sure I know what to say. Do any of us know what to say? You've shared not just your talents and your wonderful voices and artistic ability, but you've shared your very selves with us tonight, and that's just wonderful. You told us this would be moving, and you meant it. I wonder if we have Carol here, could Dirk come out, just so that we can really honour you for what you've produced for us tonight. I've never seen the church look like this before. Maybe we never will again, or maybe we will next time you come back to us. Thank you so much for supporting the rectory tonight, because as Carol said, your gifts, your time, your energies will make us build that place again and restore it as it needs to be, so that we can carry on inspiring people into the future. And it is a worldwide Methodist treasure, so we're going to celebrate that together. Thank you to the church for yet again supporting the rectory by allowing this building to be used, and for all your hospitality as always. But most of all, thank you to you for all that you've done and given to us tonight. And share some time together. I think the easiest thing, because you're going to need that exit, is that we go out the front and go around, and we're back in the guild room for tea. Thank you very much.